for years. And I think it's going to be an incredible breakthrough. And then on Saturday morning, our lead pastor, Pastor Bruce McCarty, will be speaking. And Pastor George Sawyer from Calvary Church in the Tennessee Valley area of Alabama, he's going to be coming up. And a wonderful friend, co-laborer with me at FivestarMan. Then, of course, Dr. Darrell Wooten, our network leader of the Oklahoma Assemblies of God. One of the largest networks in the Assemblies of God is right here in Oklahoma. And Dr. Darrell Wooten is doing such an incredible job. I'm just thanking God that he is leading, and he is my overseer. So I thank God for him. And so he's going to be here. It's going to be a wonderful, wonderful schedule. And then I have others that's going to be participating. We got Paul Wood and Mark Prado, and we got Sam Halbrick, and Ted Miller is going to be here. And it's just going to be an incredible, incredible time. I can't emphasize enough for you to come, but that's all I can do is tell you that you're invited. I want you to be there and make sure that you come. So we're talking about Leave the Cave and this book that I've written. I hope that you will get it. If you don't already have this, please don't hesitate. Don't wait. Go ahead and order your copy now. All of our books are donation only. I think that there has to be some type of minimal price because of transactions and so forth. But there is it's for donation. Go to FivestarMan.com. Go to the books on the menu, go to books, and you can get this book. Order it. As soon as you order it, I give you an immediate electronic download. So you don't even have to wait for the book to get started. But it's so important to get it, dive into it. There's so much practical stuff in this one that many are saying they're getting more out of it than ever before any of my books. So I don't know. I just know that a lot of guys are really liking it. And so get a hold of it. It's helping a lot of men. 1 Samuel chapter 22, verse 2. And all those who were in distress, in debt, discontented, gathered around him, and he became their commander. All 400 men were with him. Tonight's principle is every gathering of men need a leader. Now, we're going to get into this a little bit later, in that understanding of all of the strategies that Jesus could employ. Now, think about this. Of all of the strategies to change the world, Jesus could have employed a lot of different strategies. A lot of people come up with schemes. A lot of people come up with plans on their idea of changing culture, changing the atmosphere of something. And, I've dissected that into some teaching that we have, but I am more convinced than ever of the brilliance of Jesus and his strategy to gather a few men to change the world. Here's what Jesus has actually did, and you need to understand this because you're a part of it. Jesus has actually recruited you to be a part of changing the culture of our time. The very fact that you're on here tonight means that God, his son Jesus, has recruited you to change the culture and the climate of our time. So I want to show you how David did this in this moment when he is hiding in the cave of Adullam. We've talked about this. Adullam means justice. Everyone who gathered at Adullam, and this is a stronghold, it's a cave. It's hidden out into the pine trees of the area of Adullam, which oversees the valley of Elah, which, by the way, the valley of Elah is where what what David was talking about when he said, I walked through the valley of the shadow of death, because it was the valley of Elah where David faced and fought and won the victory against the Philistine army, which started with defeating Goliath, but he actually took on the entire army and defeated them. We kind of focus on the giant, but he took on the entire army and defeated them. And it was this valley of the shadow of death where he says, I will fear no evil. So now this stronghold in Adullam, this place called justice, is actually gathering everyone who is facing injustice. They're going to this cave looking for justice. There are 3 descriptives about the 400 men. 3 powerful descriptions: distressed, in debt, and discontent. There are 5 common reactions to distress when you are under extreme anxiety. Now, this isn't just feeling some pressure. This is extreme anxiety. I prayed for a friend of mine today on a phone call because a pastor friend of his, they thought he had had a stroke in the pulpit last week. Come to find out, he actually just had a stress migraine that mimicked the conditions of a stroke. And the reason why is because he was under so much stress. So distress has 5 common reactions. Listen to them. Number 1 is fear. Now, if you don't know fear, I don't know what to tell you, but fear is a spirit. Remember that God has not given us a spirit of fear, but He's given us a spirit of love, power, and of self-control or sound mind. I can tell you this, that probably the most powerful destructive force in the life of people is fear. It really is. Fear is a powerful force against us. Fear can cause so much damage in your physical being, your emotional being, and of course it can crush your spirit. So fear, these men who were gathering with David, they were fearful. They were fearful. Another common reaction to distress is anger. Now, we talked about anger in the past. Remember, we talked about the 4 faces of anger, and we talked about 2 of them being ungodly anger, and then 2 leaning toward a godly and a holy anger. Wrath being the holiest form of anger, but rage being a type of anger that causes evil. These men would lean toward more of a holy anger because of the injustice that was coming against them. So their anger was not just rage. Their anger was drawn, motivated out of a sense of injustice. So that's what happens to us, guys, when we're watching the news. And you need to understand this. When you're watching the news and you're seeing injustice, or you're seeing that evil is permeating our cities, or you see that evil is somehow subjugating innocent people to domination, it will cause an anger arise because of the injustice. So you got fear, you got anger. You also have sadness and depression. And I can tell you that I have dealt with this personally. I share this in my book, 5-Star Man. I talk about when I was a young man, how God had given me so much beyond my what I deserved. And I couldn't understand it. I had a beautiful wife, 3 children. I had built our first home debt-free. We were pastoring a growing church. Everything seemed to be the best. And yet I was somehow overwhelmingly depressed. And I wanted the comfort of the Holy Spirit to comfort me and just pat me on the back and say, come on, Neil, it's going to be okay. And I wanted him to pet me and comfort me. And that's when the Holy Spirit said, come on, get up, get your fight back. Let's, and he picked a fight with me. I felt more like Jacob at that moment, wrestling with God. And that the Holy Spirit doesn't always just show up to comfort and wash our feet. Sometimes he shows up to give us feet that are ready for battle. And he tells us to be strong and be a man. So these men who were distressed, they could have been angry, they could have been fearful, they could have been depressed, they could have been sad, but also they could have been feeling guilty. You know, when you're falsely accused, sometimes you can take on a false guilt. There's kind of a phenomenon, and it's been proven that sometimes there have been times when someone has been arrested who was completely innocent and could actually demonstrate and show that they weren't even near the crime that had been committed. But for some reason, because of the crime, even though they didn't commit it, they will take on a sense of guilt and plead guilty. Innocent people can put themselves in a position to plead guilty for something they never did. And that's the way some men are. And you've got to understand that, yeah, there are times when we're guilty, but there's also times when we accept a guilt that's not ours. And then the last common reaction to distress is shame. Shame. Remember when Adam sinned? And the reason why is he let God down. He felt so ashamed. You know, I don't know if I can explain this, but, you know, every once in a while, when you get to the season of my age, you begin to reflect on things of the past. And I try to be careful not to go into nostalgia, because nostalgia is an obsession for an unattainable past. But I've noticed that sometimes I can reflect and, you know, think about a certain situation, and I just shake my head and just feel ashamed of it. I feel ashamed of it. Now, the good news is Jesus takes away all of our shame, right? So these five common reactions to distress, these are the kind of guys that are surrounding David. Not only that, they were in debt. Debt is an excessive weight of financial burden. Now, I'm not going to get into the debate of is there good debt or bad debt, or I'm not going to just go over to Dave Ramsey's teaching, or nor am I going to go into just complete, you know, leverage kind of teaching. But the point of the matter is there is a debt that weights you down. There is some debt that doesn't. I mean, it's just not heavy. But there is debt that can weight you down. And apparently these men have been so indebted that now they are enslaved. They're dominated. And that's a key point. When debt dominates you and you become the slave to the debt, then you're in an excessive financial burden. And there is a weight to that is almost incomprehensible. Okay, the third type of man that collected around David was the discontent. Now, this word is mar, which means pain, shaft, or bitter. And now, I'm going to tell you, when you get around bitter people, there is an odor to that. There's an odor to the bitterness that people carry. Hebrews chapter 12, verse 15 says, see to it that no one falls short of the grace of God, and that no bitter root grows up to cause trouble and defile many. Because, listen, I have dealt with men and women so much. Many people, and you may identify with this. Many people have a bitter morsel, bitter root, and they chew on it. It's like having it's like having it in the cheek and chewing on it. It's like before I was a Christian, I used to dip SCO. Even thinking about it, my tongue went to my cheek, because going from 12 to by the time I got baptized in the Spirit when I was 21, I dipped SCO until that day. And there's a bitterness to it, right? And I realized that was symbolic for me. So the addiction to SCO was symbolic of what was happening in my soul. Because all of my teenage years were bitter. All of my teenage years were troubled. They were painful. They were raw, shaft. And so I know what this means. I know what this bitter root means. And one of the real challenges is to get free from the bitter morsels, because it requires you to spew them out of your mouth. So you don't want the devil to have a foothold in your life, and so no bitter root can grow. And you do that by not falling short of the grace of God. The grace of God will set you free from this bitterness, right? These are the kind of men that are gathering around David, right? Now, what do men mired in mediocrity want in life? So that's the question. These guys are gathering around David, and David is going to become their leader. What is he going to do? He is going to do exactly what we do with the strategy of 5-StarMan. That is Proverbs chapter 20, verse 5. The purposes of a man's heart are deep waters, and a man of understanding draws them out. There are 5 purposes that are within you. So in order to overcome this, and I hope you got your field guide with you, in order to overcome these 5 common reactions, this distress and debt and discontent, you need to tap into the purposes that are within you. Because purpose will give you directional intent. And purpose will give you justice. Are you with me? Purpose will give you justice. So the 5 purposes, you know them. One is the adventurous spirit. And that adventurous spirit calls you from the seduction of the sofa. That adventurous spirit gets you out of the temptation of comfort. The adventurous spirit drives you from passivity into purpose. So that adventurous spirit is within you. So when David is singing, and he's singing the psalm, I know that my God will fulfill his purpose for me, he's going to leave the cave. But he's going to lead these men to tap into the adventurous spirit. He's going to talk about the entrepreneurial drive. He's going to talk about moving into the financial rewards. Listen to me. David is going to cast the vision that these men will one day have families and homes and supplies and goods. We talked about that last week. Remember when those men they were weeping because what? They lost their families and their possessions. Well, this is before that day, and David is going to cast vision. You're going to have your own homes. You are going to fight battles, and you're going to gain spoils and the rewards. And he's tapping into that entrepreneurial drive. And that's what I'm trying to do with you. I'm constantly trying to get you to understand that the economy that God has for you is not dependent on Wall Street and Washington, but it's dependent upon the purposes that you have. You have a gift within you. You have a business. You have commerce within you. I love it when George Washington Carver grabbed a handful of peanuts and he raised that handful of peanuts and he said, God, creator of the universe, reveal to me the secrets that you housed within the peanut. And he created hundreds of practical applications of peanut. One being the peanut butter, which in my world is a controlled substance. He picked up a sweet potato and said the same thing and created hundreds of practical applications to the sweet potato. That's just two of the many things that he did. But here's my point. If there is so many secrets housed in a peanut and a sweet potato, how many more are housed within you? That's why I want you at the conferences, because I think that a time in the altar for you to discover the secrets that God has for you. Gallant relationships. So David is going to now speak to these men and he's going to talk to them about having relationships that are greater than being manipulated and all of the drama, all of the hatred that comes from fear and jealousy and animosity and all of that. He's going to talk about having long, loving, loyal relationships. And we should do that. You know, I'm convinced David always wanted to have a beautiful wife and children. I believe it. He was always looking for it. Remember his first love, Michael, that Saul's daughter that loved him, and yet she's proved to be such an obnoxious little arrogant princess that she mocked David's worship of Yahweh. And when you mock people's worship, you become barren. And she became barren. She couldn't have children because of that. And I think about that, and I think about the bitterness that she had. Ugh, odorous. And it doesn't matter how beautiful you are. If you got a personality like that, you just stink. You just stink. Right? Have you ever seen a beautiful model or a beautiful actress, and then you hear them talk and their corruption of their heart, their foul mouth, their odorous attitude takes away all of the beauty. You'll never be able to look at them as beautiful again. Right? Gallant relationships. I've got to wrap this up. I don't know what's going on with my time here. Faithful in character. Faithful in character distinguishes us from the compromised crowd. David wanted men who would be faithful in character. And so he had to build these men from this discontent, distressed, dissatisfied, in debt men so that they would become men of character. Men of character. And later you see that, man, he built mighty warriors, men of great character. And men that were not driven only by success, but philanthropic in cause. They were not just driven by success, they were driven for significance. And that's the difference. It's not just about, hey, yeah, I got my cars, my clothes, my cottages. My mom's second husband went through a midlife crisis, and my mom had had another affair. The reason he became her second husband is because they had an affair. So it was ridiculous for him to think that she would remain faithful to him. My mom was a serial adulteress. Now, let me full disclosure, I led her to Christ, and I love my mom. She's in heaven today, and I'm not disparaging her, but for the sake of just understanding. And so he went through this midlife crisis after she had an affair and was leaving him. But for some reason, it was after the fact. It was weird. It was after my mom had an affair and didn't want to have anything to do with him anymore that he actually tried to endear himself to me. And so I remember he called me and wanted me to bring out, he owned a race car, and he knew I had a pickup, and he wanted me to bring it out to Amarillo, Texas. And so he said he would pay me to do it. So a friend of mine and I went with me, and I took this race car out to Amarillo, Texas. When I got out there, he said, hey, he threw me the keys to his Corvette. He said, drive that around and have fun today, and we'll have dinner tonight. Well, I had all day long to drive this absolutely gorgeous brand new Corvette, T-top, had the T-tops off. And my friend with me, we drove around, and we drove around the university out there in Amarillo, and it was so funny. You know, I was young and single and driving this Corvette. And that night we went to have steak at a steakhouse, and we're sitting at the table, and the waitress came up, and she looked at me and she says, do you drive a Corvette? And I said, yes, I do. I do drive a Corvette. I remember what that would feel like, having that kind of wealth and that kind of opulence. And to be honest with you, I thought this will be fleeting. If you chase this your whole life, this will be fleeting. It was fun for the moment, but it would be fleeting. Amen. All right, guys, I'm not going to be able to finish this. So here's why I don't want to stop short on this next part, the power of engaging men. I'm going to carry that part over to next week. I hope that's okay with you. I just don't want to stop short on it. I don't want to just be short on this. So I'm going to carry this over to next week, if you don't mind. And that way I don't sell it short, because it's so vitally important what I was going to share with you. So I'm going to make sure that we do that next week. Hey, thanks again for being a part of 5-Star Man. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you. Thank you for all of our partners. Thank you. Next week, I'm going to tell you some more because of the ending of this, and I'm going to tell you more about what our plans are going forward and how we can better serve you. So until then, God bless you. Make sure you go to 5starman.com, go to the menu, go to events, and sign up. RSVP now. We already have a really good registration. Now is the time that people will actually start registering. I really feel good about how many have already registered. So go there, register, drop me a note in the comments, text me, message me. I love you guys. We'll talk to you later.
There's consequences when people stop setting goals and dreaming dreams. There's consequences when men stop speaking God's plan over their children. There's consequences when men hide in caves and get quiet and stoic and turn inward. There's consequences